Okay, we've got the strings cut out of the 03 Tour Mid Plus and the 18 feet of Babala XL cut off the reel for the mains and 16.5 feet of Babala XL cut off the reel for the crosses. And again, this is to demonstrate the 50-50 string pattern for the crosses to avoid all those pitfalls of trying to install the crosses and tensioning through these O-ports. Basically, this is video 2 of 2. So if you didn't already watch the first part that covered all the problems that O-ports cause when trying to install the crosses and all the different remedies that people have come up with, you can go back and watch part number 1. But a couple things that I didn't mention yet. This racket, which I already mentioned, is a 16 by 18. Since it's got 18 crosses, and that's an even number, when we go to do the crosses and start them in the center and work our way out, we'll put the middle of the string at the edge of the racket, because there'll be 9 crosses going down from that point and 9 crosses up from that point for a total of 18. But if this racket, like the oversized version of this racket, is a 16 by 19 racket. So if you're doing an O-port racket and you're going to do the 50-50 pattern for the crosses, and it's got an odd number of crosses, like here's an 03 red, this is 16-19, so when I do the crosses on this, you have to figure out where the center cross is going to be. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So here's the 10th one. So there's 9 above this 10th cross and 9 below. In other words, the center point of the cross string is going to be the center of the 10th cross instead of at the edge. So if this has got 18 crosses like this frame, then you're going to want to center your cross string over here at the side as opposed to the middle of the 10th cross. So when I do a racket like this, I put a little mark on the string in the dead center of the string so that I can arrange to get the 10th cross in place with the mark in the center of the 2 center mains. Also, this frame only has skips 8 head and 8 throat, so there's only 1 skip in each of the upper corners and the lower corners, whereas a lot of the other O-port rackets are like this, where it skips 7 and 9 at the head and 7 and 9 at the throat. So when I string up a racket like this, for those of you who've seen a lot of my videos or most of my videos, to make it easy, a simple way to get around blocked holes is when you're installing mains and you're skipping holes that are later to be crosses. In other words, you're blocking the holes. I will place one of these purple ribbons around that loop of string so that I can tug down on it or up on it to get my crosses through there easily later. And I use more ribbons stringing these kinds of O-ports. Normally you might see me use 2 of these or maybe 4 of them. On this racket I'll only need 4 because there's going to be 1 blocked hole in each corner. So I'll have 1 ribbon in each corner when I finish up with the mains, and just prior to getting them tied off, I'll have a ribbon in each corner to make it easier when I get my crosses, which are going from the center towards the top and the center towards the bottom. It'll make it easier to get those crosses installed, especially with a soft multi like Babala XL. But this only has single skips. This racket has skips 7 and 9 at the head and the throat. I end up using 1 ribbon here, 1 ribbon here, and then 2 up here and 2 up here, because there'll be 2 blocked holes. Since these outer mains tie off at the top on this kind of racket, they're just, suffice it to say, there's 2 blocks here that'll be covered up if you don't do something and plan ahead, and here. Now normally, most string jobs, I'm always installing my top 3 crosses very early on before I finish up at the mains, so I never have to deal with any blocked holes at the head end of the racket. So when you see me using ribbons, it's usually just towards the throat here for maybe the bottom cross or 2 to make them easier. But since I'm doing these kinds of rackets 50-50, I can't have the crosses already in place up here where those blocked holes would be. So this kind of racket would have a total of 6 ribbons, 4 at the top and 2 at the bottom. But here I'll only need 4. Actually here, this is easier. So this is also a 16 by 19. This is a EXO3 Warrior 100 16 by 19. You can see now, unfortunately I already have the strings cut out of here, but this has only a single skip, but this is skipping 7 and 9 at the head, top and second cross, and then your 18th and 19th cross down here skips 7 and 9 as well. So those would be locked holes on this racket. So again, like 6 ribbons to do this one 50-50. Alright, so let's get the 18 mains in here. Like I said, I'll put the purple ribbons in place so that it'll be easier, and then we'll get started so that you can see how the 50-50 is done with the crosses using 2 starting clamps and 2 flat spacers. I talked about this in the previous video. Go reference that if you haven't seen it already. So we're going to do this at 52 pounds, both mains and crosses. So I cut 18 feet of Excel for my mains and just 16.5 feet of Excel for the crosses, because I always try to cut the absolute minimum for my reels to maximize the reels. So these links I may end up using my starting clamp to bridge final pulls to the tension head. So the outer mains, or possibly the top cross and possibly the bottom cross, I may need to bridge. I won't come up short. I mean, I'll be able to make it, but I may not be able to actually load the string into the gripper on those final pulls, but that's fine by me. Like I said, I'm always trying to maximize the length of my reels, or the usage. So for these two outer mains to reach the back of the gripper, they would need to be about another inch long on each side, maybe an inch and a half. But like I said, I'm perfectly fine bridging to the tension head. As long as the string length is enough to comfortably tie the knots, that's all I need. So the hole at the top doesn't actually get blocked until you tie off a main, so that's actually what causes the block. So I'll put my purple ribbon in before I actually get my knot all finished up. So I'm going to flatten the tip of the string to make it easier to get through this shared hole. And of course, being a multi-filament, it wants to buckle. So we're going to flatten that and cut a really sharp point across the flat tip. You'll very seldom ever see me use an awl. I'm just trying to make, I can actually see the hole there. I didn't have to risk nicking that string. I'm just trying to press that string a little bit down to make room for this string to go slightly above it. The string is just so soft that as I push on it, it continually buckles. So we'll resort to plan B or plan C. It's very seldom that you'll see me use a Pathfinder awl as well. Now this side is not being nearly as problematic. I don't know why. Sometimes this happens where it's not so bad on one side and a huge fight on the other, but we'll deal with each one in turn. I've got a couple more tricks that might work over here. So let me work at this a little bit more. One option is I can retension this string, move the clamp back over 2 strings previously so that there's no tension on the string that's going through the grommet that I'm trying to get through, and then insert the tip of this string through there before I tension this. Of course, I'll have a very short loop here to reach the tensioner, so I would actually use a starting clamp to bridge for that pull as well as this pull right here so that this tip didn't get pulled out. I can also do the same thing and insert the Pathfinder awl through that grommet. But basically, the tip, either the Pathfinder awl or the tip of this string is probably going to need to be through that grommet before this 7th penultimate main is ever tensioned. So we'll see if we can work a little magic here by changing the orientation of the point. And hopefully we don't have to backtrack, because this is being more and more problematic. Oh, I think it's going to go this time. Yep. So we didn't actually have to backtrack. But that is one thing I could have done, is retension this string, move this clamp back to here, 2 strings over, and then have this string installed, the outer main installed, take the tip of this and put it through like you see it right now, then tension this penultimate main with the short loop down here with the starting clamp to the tension head, move the clamp from here to there, then tension the outer main short loop here again with the starting clamp bridging to the tension head, and then move the clamp from here to back to where you see it now, and we'd be in this position. So thank goodness we didn't have to go through all that. Oh, get my ribbon in here so that I'm not swearing later on as I try to get that top cross installed. So these are Parnell knots here up top. And now we're going to get started on those crosses. So again, like I said, being that this racket has an even number of crosses, it'll have the same number, north and south of the equator, so to speak. So 9 above and a 9 below. That means the midpoint will reside at the side of the racket. If you have an odd number of crosses on your O-port racket, 19 for example, then you're going to need to position your cross string. You're going to find the center of this string and put it not here, but in the middle of the string bed where the 10th cross would be if you have 19 crosses. So in either case, you need to put the ends together and identify where the dead center is going to be. And for this racket, we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 will be over here. So it's gonna be on this side. And your weaves are gonna be opposite. Obviously, you know, one of these strings you're gonna start over, and one of these strings you're gonna start under. So I'm going to even up my two tips over here. So I'm going to check the ends to make sure that these are perfectly even, and if they need to be adjusted, we will. Yep, so they've gotten a little bit off. So we'll put them back together and figure out which one needs to be adjusted. And so now I'm going to pull tension on both of these. Now there's a couple ways you could do this. I'm going to simultaneously pull tension on both, sort of like the Yusuke method. Place a starting clamp and a spacer on the outside. Now if you don't like putting two strings into your gripper for some reason, or your gripper won't allow for it, you can do this where you just go ahead and start by placing a starting clamp, and in this case my little block, on just one of these two strings and holding that with a starting clamp, and then you can pull the opposite one, and then obviously clamp it with the machine clamp. So that's one way, is you can just basically put a starting clamp on one of these two strands, probably the lower one here like this, put your starting clamp in place, and then just pull tension here. But I like to pull tension on both, and that way one of them doesn't want to creep a little bit further than the other. No need to change the tension since this is still 52 pounds for the crosses. So now I'm going to place the spacer here and put my starting clamp on right there. And just like doing the Yusuke method for the mains, I'm going to put the fixed clamp on the far side so that it maintains that tension. Of course, this is only roughly half tension because I'm pulling both strands, but each of these will get its own individual pull in just a moment. So now I'm going to pull, so this is maintaining tension between the fixed clamp and the starting clamp here. So now tension, I believe this is the 10th main and this is the 9th. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, yeah. So I'm about to tension the 9th one right here, or the one that's closer to the head. Actually, before I do that, I want to weave one ahead, make life easy on myself. So for those of you that have a preference when you're normally doing your crosses on a regular racket, most of us have a preference. When we start a cross, we like to either start under the first main we come to, weave across, and we'll finish on top of or over. So you're starting under, finishing over, so to speak. Or some people prefer to do it the other way where they start across over the first main, weave across, and then they'll end up underneath. When you're doing it this method, you're going to do half of the racket starting over and finishing under, and the other half of the racket you're going to start under and finish over. So you can't have it the way you want it both ways. So you're going to have to do it a little bit opposite of whatever you normally are accustomed to, at least for half of the racket. Okay, so now that we've got one string woven ahead, we'll go ahead and tension that 9th main now, or 9th cross I should say. So that's now getting full reference tension, 52 pounds on that particular cross. Again, still weaving one ahead. So on the upper portion of the racket, I've now got it where I have to start over and finish under, which is the opposite the way I normally would do it. So the lower half of the racket is going to be the way I'm accustomed to. And I'm not going to do all of the top and all of the bottom. I should have stated that at the outset, is that the goal is to just do half and then turn around and do the other half. You're trying to distribute the pressure evenly, just like you do on the mains. You don't do half of the mains and then go back and do the other side. So you do 1, 2, maybe 3. I'm just breaking the inner string friction here by wiggling the cross before I clamp off. So now I'm not going to actually tension any more strings. I'm going to go ahead and switch to start tensioning some of the strings in the lower portion of the hoop. And you'll see where instead of now having to jockey and move around a single starting clamp the way I've seen videos of people doing that. Like I said, Why You Little's got a good video on how to do this particular method. He just isn't doing it on an O-port racket or using these spacers, and he doesn't use 2 starting clamps. So he has to do a little bit more of a clamp dance. So if you only have 1 starting clamp, I would I would reference you to that video. So over here, actually we'll tension one more because I'm going to put, I could do it over here, it doesn't really matter, but I already put this clamp here. Here, I'll back it up just to show you. So I could either tension this and put the starting clamp here on this side, but I don't really want to tension 4 crosses. I want to go ahead and get a few more into the lower portion of the hoop. So I'll back this out a little bit and show you. So I actually shouldn't have moved this clamp. I should have just, when I tensioned this string right here, I should have just put the starting clamps on it straight away. So, in other words, could have done this. these don't have to stay on the same side, they just happenstance that I'm doing it this way right now. And so now we can tension this string, which again, remember, we only this only has roughly half of reference tension because it was involved in that double pull of the 9th and 10th main. So we're now applying full reference tension for the first time to our 10th cross string. And I forgot, I should have woven my next cross one ahead. So now this is a little bit of a harder weave than it would have been otherwise. These are the little things that you forget. I mean, obviously I'm not doing this 50-50 pattern frequently enough to remember every little step that would make it super efficient. So now we'll weave one ahead before we go any further. Somehow got 3 strings in the same port, so when I was trying to weave that one ahead, I obviously was off by 1 hole. So having two starting clamps going does make it slightly more efficient than if you have to keep moving the single one around. So this is our final top cross. We'll see if it's long enough to reach or if I need to bridge. It would need to be about 3/4 of an inch, maybe 1 more inch to actually get around to the back of the gripper. But again, I'm perfectly fine bridging to the tension head. Oh. And the bottom cross is about 1/2 inch past the edge of the gripper, so this one will actually reach if I want. So that's how you do the 50-50 method of installing your crosses. And like I said, that's pretty much the way I do any O-port frame, so that you don't have to be fighting with the string trying to jump into the wrong part of the O-ports, or stressing your tension head by sideways torsional forces being applied to it. So even if you were familiar with the 50-50 pattern or method of installing the crosses before, maybe you had never seen it done using 2 starting clamps to sort of minimize the pain, I should say. Makes it a little bit easier. You don't have to be so... when you're doing it with only 1 starting clamp, you got to be really careful about timing when you're stopping, so that you can... In other words, if you have a starting clamp, let's say on this side, from your perspective, the left side of the frame, so if that's maintaining tension so that you can use both machine clamps to make some progress going down, and you do a few strings going down, you have to stop with your machine clamp on the opposite side. In other words, this one has to be maintaining tension so that this one can actually be dropped and freed up, so that when you retension the string that the starting clamp is on, you actually have a machine clamp free to take its place. And then proceed, and then you have to retension this string over here so that you can put the starting clamp over here, so that this one can then get freed up. So you're moving this thing around to constantly free up your machine clamps. If you've got 2 of them, you can make it a lot easier, as you've seen me do. So that's it, we're all done.